On this episode of Money and Power, we were going to debate, but then we got high. But first, Kid Inc.
I got the money and the power. Yeah. Once you get a little, they just want to take you down, cuz we've been going hard for too long. Can't get enough, what is you on? Yeah. Really ain't nothing I could drop that. Wake up in the morning, make it all okay. It's nothing to get it poppin'.
Welcome to episode 23 of Money and Power, our weekly look at questions related to finance, politics, and culture. I am your host, Nathan Martin, and joining me from Michigan, a financial consultant and host of the Rob Talks Money and Apologetics 105 podcast, Rob Johnson.
Hi.
And joining me in studio here in the crown jewel of rural Ohio, a laboratory technician, Jeremiah Martin.
Oh, I am here.
Together, we are the trio of talk, the triad of the tittle-tattle, and the triumvirate of the tete-a-tete. And we have got a show for you. But before we get there, how was your guys' last week?
Not bad at all.
Freshly shorn, Jeremiah.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, a bit of news in my life. I am... today is the last day, as of recording this, Monday night. Today is the last day of my Army contract. I re-enlisted, so it doesn't really mean that much. But gotta get a new ID card and all that jazz. So, yep, newly shaven, and usually I grow out some facial hair in between duty, but yeah. So.
Well, you got tricked by the Army. You had to go get an ID card, and then they were...
Well, actually tricked by the Air Force.
That's right, Air Force.
Because I went to the nearest base, which is an air base, and I was like, hey, I need a new ID card because it expires today. And they said, well, interestingly enough, we only do ID cards every third Tuesday from 1 to 1:15 p.m. and every fourth Sunday from, just kidding, we're closed on Sundays. No, it wasn't exactly that bad, but it was pretty bad, so I had to make an appointment and that whole jazz. But so anyway, yeah, re-enlisted for another 6 years. So, good on me.
And Rob, how's your week?
Good. I still do the same job. I didn't re-enlist in anything.
It's always good. You didn't lose it, so there you are.
Didn't lose it. No, it was a good week. Last week was super busy. But this week is looking a lot slower. I'm going to Iowa next week, and then going to see the Huskers get smoked on Saturday. So it'll be a good time.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably accurate. Yeah, we are we by my dad, myself, and my brother try to get to at least one Nebraska game a year, and since they're in the Big Ten, it gives us a lot of opportunities. Because locations are close. And so this year we chose to go to Ann Arbor, and amazingly enough, it was cheaper to get 4 tickets than it was to get 3 tickets. So we got 4 tickets and said, hey, Rob, you're in Michigan. And, the place won't catch on fire if a State fan walks in the building. So
I'm going to wear all State gear as well.
That's going to be amazing.
Yeah,
I'm wearing full Nebraska gear. I don't care.
Yeah, interesting.
No one else is gonna care either when it's 48-0.
You know what? That hot dog I owe you. No more.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say. Interestingly enough, this will be the first time that the three of us get to meet each other in person. The first time Nathan and I are meeting Rob, I should say, in person. Nathan and I have already met. I think that's apparent. But yeah, this will be the first time we're meeting Rob, and to be honest, I'm already regretting it.
I'm not that awful of a brother. I have met you. Oh, all right.
You've heard of absentee fathers. Well, this is absentee brother.
Yeah, what's the sound of the brother leaving out of the driveway, Rob?
Oh, I got something for you. Hold on 1 second.
All right.
Oh, whoops, that was the Tiger Woods clip. Sorry. Glass breaking out the windshield.
It does sound like my old Volkswagen. All right. So now it is time, oh my goodness, for our look back at the weird, the inane, and the general happenings going on in the world by the crazy people who happen to live here. News bits.
News bits. Show me your bits.
Of news. All right. Rob.
Sure. I'll go first. So hot breaking news this week. Judge Brett Kavanaugh, who is currently nominated for Supreme Court Justice, had a bit of news break surrounding him. A woman professor by the name of Christine Ford brought forth, well, first it started off as like this anonymous letter that was given to Senator Feinstein. And then this turned into her name being mentioned and getting this story out to the public, which is basically when she was 15 years old, allegedly, Judge Kavanaugh, who was around 17 at the time, had physically and sexually assaulted her. And this turned into a huge thing in the media. People on both sides are seemingly waiting for more information, but this is going to go to the Senate committee. She's going to be testifying next Monday, and this delayed the vote, which was originally going to take place this Thursday. So there's not a ton of information out. Obviously, Kavanaugh is denying this. The White House announced this evening that they're going to be backing Kavanaugh, and they cited several women who used him several women who knew him when he was in his teenage years. They're using those women as character witnesses for Kavanaugh. So the White House, as of right now, is standing behind Kavanaugh. There's a lot of different ways we can go into this. We could actually turn this into a whole show, but I'd kind of rather wait till we get some more details. But really, there's just not a lot of information. There's an allegation made by her, a denial made by him, and then this is going to push out the vote for probably another week or two. And then we'll see what happens at the testimony a week from today, which today is Monday, so it'll be the following week. But really, it's just kind of wait and see for me. I read probably 6 or 7 different articles from different perspectives, and it's an allegation, and it should be considered just that as of right now.
Yeah, so I think it's tempting. It is tempting to say that we just disregard someone's claims because they were a long time ago and such and such and such and such. We've all seen those arguments and stuff. So I think for me, and I actually saw this somewhere, I can't remember, but the Me Too movement, right, isn't so much as that women are automatically believed. It's a matter of women need to be heard, right? So I'm okay with the delay. Give the accuser, it's not anonymous. She's come forward, and so give her day to say her allegations. At the end of the day, I think that what we're going to see is that it's going to be at best, a he said, she said, although she did mention specifically someone by name who allegedly pulled him off of her, and that person has denied the account. So I don't know. I don't know that we're really ever going to know factually what happened, because it was so long ago, etc. So I don't necessarily want to speak to that. So let's just assume, for argument's sake, let's just assume that her allegations are correct. Okay? Just for argument's sake, for what I'm about to say. This couldn't have been handled worse by the Congresswoman and Senator Feinstein at all. The fact that they knew this since July, a lot of people don't know how necessarily the confirmation process goes, but the nominee is made available to the senators for one-on-ones. So she didn't even share it with her own caucus so they could grill him behind closed doors. She didn't share it with anybody. So nobody could ask him about this. Not to mention, we saw the showmanship of the committee hearings of them grilling. You don't think that, Cory Booker would have loved to be able to grill him on that, or the senator from California, her fellow senator from California wouldn't have loved to have been able to just really bring it to him on this? Like, what in the world? To put it so late in the process, like, I hate to be so cynical, but it's really a matter of so late in the process that they know that no other nominee could be voted on before the midterms, according to Senate arcane procedure. Now, I think at this point, all's fair in love and war. Like, if you do withdraw, push it through. I don't care about arcane Senate procedure at this point. Like, go full nuclear option. But it is really, really crazy the way that this was handled. I also think when it does come to the midterms, you're starting to see an uptick in Republican outrage, and how that translates to get out the vote will be interesting. It really seems that they kind of overplayed their hand, so to speak, when it comes to just the handling of the information. Again, I don't want to speak to the allegations, but just the handling of the information seemed like some really, at best, poor decision making. At worst, deliberate dirty pool.
Yeah, I think those are fair points. It is. I think the frustration for me, taking this issue almost aside, just the Me Too movement as a whole, I think it is situations like this that give people a distrust of the Me Too movement as a whole. And I think that honestly that ultimately does a disservice to women, to our wives and mothers and sisters and friends, that because what could have been a positive movement, Me Too movement, has become in many cases, and it'll still be, it's to be determined whether it is in this case, but it has become a weapon to be used against men in power, and especially a political divide between left and right, just weaponized. And I think ultimately that does a disservice to women. And so, I think the whole situation's been handled poorly, and we'll just have to wait and see.
There were a couple things in the article that stuck out that I'm waiting to see develop. And as I was looking through it, I was saying, well, what in this could be used to discredit or credit her story? And Nathan brought up, she gave a lot of details back when this occurred. The place, a little foggy on the time. But the one thing that stuck out to me was that she had mentioned this event back in 2012, 6 years ago, when she was speaking with a therapist about it. And apparently 10 years into her marriage, this had caused some issues that she needed to seek counseling for. So that note stuck out to me. So I'll be interested to see how that plays into this story. And I agree with both of you that the timing is odd. And I get, like, what she was saying was, well, at that time he wasn't being considered for a Supreme Court justice. But
was
there's
he?
What's
because
that?
he was on Romney's shortlist, and it was well
Correct.
known. It was well known that he was on Romney's shortlist, and that was 2012 that she went to this therapy.
I see. Okay. Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see how that plays. So, a couple of things from the story, but we can move on. But I just thought it's interesting because I don't want to ever throw shade on someone's claim of sexual assault, but there needs to be some evidence and some justification. And I haven't seen it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist yet. So I'm anxious to see how this plays out.
Yeah, and I will say, those who claim these things falsely should have the absolute book thrown at them. because these kind of accusations, just when like child abuse accusations, all those things, like the accusation pretty much in the minds of people is a guilty verdict. And you're ruining someone's career and life. And I understand people's thought, okay, well, President Trump doesn't treat women with respect all the time. And I would agree. Okay. But they're two different people. And there are good jurists who are nominated by one party or the other, that just because the person nominated them may not be the best character doesn't mean that that should detract from the character of the person that is on the bench. You have to look at these things. I mean, you're talking about someone who believes so firmly in the judicial independence that he doesn't vote. He doesn't partake in the electoral process. He says it's not. He doesn't believe that that is mandatory for fellow jurists, but it's something he does because he so firmly does it. He doesn't believe that you should be able to stump. You should not be giving financial contributions. Like, you should be an independent judiciary, and he holds it so like further. It's like I think he is a good man, and I think he is a fair-minded jurist, and I think that even there has to be a certain point where the sins of your past are in the past, I guess. And it's like 36. At what point does a mistake or something you did that was never repeated? So, and I'm going on the assumption the allegations are true. Personally, I find that a bridge too far right now, but I'm going by that assumption purely because, you know what, tomorrow some physical evidence could come out, right? And I don't, so I'm trying to be fair-minded here, but it does become increasingly difficult, and it's going to bring up a lot of questions. So, anyways, I'm sure there'll be more of that in the future. Jeremiah.
All right, so we mentioned this a little bit last week with our guest, John Burns, having Hurricane Florence he was in the direct path of that, and so it's been all over the news, and in some areas it's been overestimated, in some areas it's been underestimated, and so it's just been all over the news. You can't miss it. But in the midst of all this conversation of Hurricane Florence, there's a couple pieces of news that, while they're being reported, I actually think they're connected, and I think that they're kind of being squashed by the mainstream media. So, first piece of news: remnants of Florence bringing heavy rain to Massachusetts. So, Massachusetts, oh wow, all the way up the east coast. I mean, that's far up there. That's impressive. Okay. Don't think anything of it until you get to this little piece of information. Fatal shark attack off Cape Cod is the first in Massachusetts since 1936. So, Hurricane Florence, torrential rains in Massachusetts, fatal shark attack. Is this Sharknado being squashed by the mainstream media? Hashtag fake news much? Come on, guys. Did we just uncover something?
I think we did. I did. This is definitely... I don't know how this isn't bigger news.
I mean, it's straight out of Sharknado 5. I mean, this is it, guys. This is Sharknado 5 happening right now in real time. I understand Hurricane Florence. It's a big deal. Thoughts and prayers and resources, and donate to the Red Cross and all these things. We need to help the victims. But there's victims in other areas and fatal shark attacks. Guys,
and you know what?
Troubled. I'm troubled.
When they cover this stuff up, you know who the real victims are? All of us. We're all victims here.
Yeah.
We deserve the truth.
Listen, Ohio's going to start getting some of these, tertiary effects from the hurricane. How do we know that north central Ohio isn't going to get hit by just random sharks flying from the sky?
I'm telling you.
It's starting right now. It's starting. I'm terrified to walk to my car.
Rob?
I got nothing. I'm just running the soundboard over here, trying to underlay stuff that Jeremiah's saying.
It's a travesty. President Trump is constantly talking about fake news. It is one thing when social media companies collude to prevent people from being on their platforms. It's a whole nother story when you have entire news networks colluding to prevent us from getting the real news here. The real news.
Well, I think everyone knows the media is owned by essentially 5 companies. So those 5 companies can easily come together and shift the narrative away from something as serious as this.
Yeah, it's very serious, and I, for one, am alarmed, and I just want this podcast to be the first place that hears it. You heard it here first. Connect the dots, people. That's all I'm saying. All I'm saying is open your minds, connect the dots.
Sharknadoes.
There's
terrifying.
There's one more thing you could say about this,
What's that?
which is pretty appropriate as Nathan's going through and doing doing his Jaws theme. Let's see if I can pull this clip up. You're gonna need a bigger boat. That's it. What can you say? Do you guys know what movie that's from?
We didn't hear a clip.
You didn't hear a clip? What the hell? Oh, you know why you didn't hear a clip? Because I played it on Chrome instead of Safari. What a loser. I'm just going to leave it like this.
Or is it possible that CNN is colluding with the NSA? They're listening to our conversation.
They don't want our listeners to hear this clip. That's the problem.
That's it.
I'm just saying, first, Alex Jones. Next, the Money and Power podcast.
We're already getting demonetized. Sponsors aren't paying attention to us because of the major news networks.
Yeah, it's all about that. Fake news. All right. My news bit. We're just leaving that all in there. Don't cut a single bit of that out. All right.
I'm not cutting anything.
All right. So in Ohio, we have an election coming up, guys. I know you guys are familiar with this, but in Ohio, we have issue 1 that's going to be on the ballot. And it is basically, well, I should say basically. It doesn't really. It is pseudo legalization of marijuana. And by pseudo, it's it's under the guise of a criminal justice reform. It's actually really bad policy and legislation. Beyond your beliefs about legalization of marijuana or whatever. I mean, the amount of fentanyl that it allows you to have before you can have trafficking can kill like 30,000 people or something ridiculous like that. It's just they obviously didn't consult people. They basically just wanted to make every drug crime misdemeanor or below in Ohio and retroactively free people from prison. So it's not good policy. It adds it to the Constitution, which is another layer. Unfortunately, a lot of people are going to vote for it because they think it is that they're going to be able to go to a local dispensary or something the week after. But anyways, so we have that coming up. It got me kind of thinking about the issue, and by got me kind of thinking, it got Rob kind of thinking because he said, "Hey, let's have a debate." So we. For our main segment,
real quick, I want to jump in real quick.
Okay,
is that? Do you think that's going to pass?
again, my thoughts on legalization aside, like it really is horrific policy. Like,
I understand that. I'm just saying,
yeah.
do you think that people are going to support it? Because I just read it. It looks like trash.
I do think they will because it's being sold as a legalization thing. Now, whether it gets to 50% or not, it's just that's how it's being sold, and people are like, "Oh, the legalization thing. Yeah, I'm going to vote for it." And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't. We can have that discussion, but this is not that. Yeah, it is. It's
a shame.
Not good.
I mean, what's interesting though is that there are millions of dollars coming into the state from out of state, from George Soros, from Mark Zuckerberg, and others, to support this initiative, and it's unclear what the intentions are there. But there's a lot of money coming into the state from outside of Ohio to support this. There are a ton of organizations on the local level that are opposed to it, but yeah, there's a lot of money supporting it as well. So we have shut down some policy ballot initiatives that have been bad policy but sound really good on the outside. So we've shut those down in the past. So it's really a toss-up. It'll be really interesting to see how it all comes together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks. Is it really being funded by George Soros, or are you just kidding around?
No, 100%. Both George Soros put in $1 million at least, and Mark Zuckerberg put in $1 million at least.
And some of the guys, again, criminal justice reform. And some of it does sound decent, but like there's some violent offenders that will actually be able to get release outside of the parole system under this. And now they put in caveats for like rape, murder, like the big ones. But whoever wrote it didn't realize that there are a lot of secondary and tertiary offenses that are along the same lines. So, okay, you weren't convicted of rape, but you were convicted of gross sexual assault.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
your bullet just missed him, but you're going to be getting out.
So you weren't convicted of murder, but you were convicted of manslaughter in the whatever degree. Like, there's just a lot of, it's bad policy, and it just sets bad precedents. But again, even on the drug side, like the levels are really up. Like, I don't know that there are a lot of people who are like, hey, let's legalize all drugs. And hey, you know what? Fentanyl is a public health good, and we're putting innocent people in prison. So let's, make that a misdemeanor. I don't think that's the argument. But to the point, Rob said, hey, let's have a debate about this. And so we are going to have a debate. And it's going to be a first of several debates that we're going to have on this topic. For this debate, what we are going to be discussing. Actually, Jeremiah, why don't you set forth the rules of the debate and what we are going to be actually debating.
All right, so I will be moderating the debate. The topic is as such. Resolved, it is in the best interest of the American people to legalize marijuana. And so each of these gentlemen will have 2 minutes for opening remarks, and then they will have 2 minutes each for a rebuttal, and then we'll have a cross-examination, and then we will have an additional line of questioning for me, and then 1 minute each for closing remarks. So we're aiming for about 30 minutes, and give or take, and it shall be interesting.
All right. So, Rob, you are in the affirmative, so you go first.
Oh, no one's going to give me a like a little profile, little intro.
We already did that in the intro.
Oh.
Yeah, Rob Johnson, the host of the Rob Talks Money podcast, Apologetics 105 podcast.
Great show.
And
great show.
Weed, Hash Mary Jane podcast.
All a part of the Money and Power Podcast Network.
Rob, your opening remarks begin now.
Sure. So I look at the marijuana argument like this. Would legalizing marijuana be harmful to society? And the answer to me is largely no. When juxtaposed to alcohol, marijuana is 50% less addictive than alcohol and 75% less addictive than nicotine. Couple that with the fact that you cannot overdose on marijuana and that there are demonstrable health benefits, there's really no reason to keep marijuana illegal. There's no solid evidence that points to marijuana being a gateway drug, as generally alcohol and cigarettes are precursors to marijuana usage. And the arguments that could be made about why marijuana should be illegal could be made about alcohol with a multiplier of about 2x or more. This is also helpful against the fight against the opioid crisis. So this isn't a one-trick pony argument where I'm saying, alcohol is legal, so weed should be legal too. This is actually helpful in the fight against opioids as well. While the data isn't groundbreaking, opioid deaths decreased 7% after marijuana became legal in Colorado. People prefer marijuana to opioids as they're less addictive and they don't have the negative effects found within opioids. It's also preferable to things like NSAIDs. There's no gastrointestinal issues associated with marijuana as there are with frequent NSAID use. And an NSAID's like ibuprofen and the like. So further, no study has shown that smoking marijuana causes lung cancer, and actually studies are showing the opposite, that it's aiding and helping reducing tumor growth with the side effects of chemotherapy. It's also beneficial medically, and it's far less problematic than alcohol socially. This isn't a one-dimensional case, it's cumulative. We need to factor in societal ethics, medicinal benefits, and compare it to substances that are within full production in the United States, like alcohol.
10 seconds.
When we do that, when we look at the cumulative case, there is no good reason why marijuana should be illegal. Boom.
And time. All right, Nathan, your opening statement. Begin.
All right. So for me, it becomes a matter of, okay, is it in the best interest of the American people to legalize marijuana? And I don't think that it is. Especially, and I'm going to go to the case of the way that marijuana is being legalized currently in the country. Rob alluded to alcohol use and tobacco use. And indeed, these are two of the most regulated products on the market today. However, when you see in states like Colorado and Washington, in places where there's been widespread legalization, the regulation to follow is just not there. The FDA and the FTC is not going in and examining claims that it's actually helping cure cancer or other issues. And in fact, in Colorado, it is okay for a dispensary to recommend marijuana usage to a pregnant woman for morning sickness, when this is strictly against the guidelines of the American Medical Association and the CDC. Comparing it with alcohol, if we're going to compare with alcohol, it is actually more addictive than alcohol. 1 in 10 people who use marijuana will become addicted or marijuana dependent. Only 1 in 30 of those who have alcohol become alcohol dependent. This is not to say that you don't consume a lot of alcohol, but it is to say actually alcohol dependent, which I'm going to separate out from actually alcoholism. In places where it has been passed, the incidences of fatal accidents with marijuana usage has doubled in those states. And it may be a correlation versus causation. We can have that further discussion. But when it's the same amongst several states, I think that it's more causation.
And time. All right. Rob, your first rebuttal. Begin.
Super. So a couple of things. So I'm not certain where you got the addictive statistic from. So both Scientific American and Harvard University published studies, and this is from 2016 to 2018, detailing studies that showed the dependency of marijuana usage being 9% and the dependency of alcohol usage being 15%. and I think it was nicotine was like 32%, heroin was 23%. So this is pretty consistent across the board. So I don't see where there's a 3x jump for marijuana over alcohol, but I'm happy to be corrected. I'm all for regulation and reforming how marijuana is legalized and rolled out. But just because the regulation isn't there doesn't mean that it's not a positive argument to keep it illegal. And also for the traffic fatalities, there are several studies that suggest just the opposite. So I'm not sure which one you're pointing to. But even if it is the case that they're testing more for marijuana usage with traffic fatalities in those states where marijuana is now legalized, it doesn't mean that marijuana was the cause of the crime. It'd be interesting to see if alcohol was another factor. Some of the studies that I saw suggested that was the case. So it really just depends on what you're looking at. And as you said, the causation correlation issue is something that's worth talking about as well. So I don't really see a lot of negatives for introducing marijuana to the public. As far as overdose, alcohol poisoning, all of these things are much more negative when you look at alcohol juxtaposed to marijuana. So I don't see why marijuana would
20
be
seconds
down on the list for keeping it illegal when something that is equally terrible, or more terrible rather, for the public, alcohol is legal. So I'm not seeing a lot of the evidence being brought about from you on why that is the case, that it should remain illegal.
Time. Nathan?
All right, a couple things. First of all, my statistics on the addictive are from the CDC directly. Both the 10% and the 1 in 30 are from the CDC directly. To quickly go into basically when and that also increases to 16% when it's introduced in adolescence. In fact, even those who are ardent marijuana supporters would point to studies that show that there is long-term and short-term health and brain effects for anyone who is under the age 18, going and getting both not just the smoking variety, but also the edibles. And that's another thing we need to talk about too. In 1995, on federally confiscated marijuana, the average THC amounts were around 4%. Now, of federally it's now of federally confiscated marijuana, it's up to 12%, and in the dispensaries, on average in Colorado, it's 20%, and edibles are up to 80%. This is not to say that this is just a drug that people are fine with recreationally or medicinally, just getting that little bit of calming effect. When you're trying to get more
20 seconds.
and more potency, it tells me that there's a bigger issue in play. Also, when it comes to the, I'll talk about in cross-examination about the correlation versus causation. But suffice it to say, the evidence is there that it does indeed cause more traffic fatalities.
Time. All right. So now we will begin cross-examination for 5 minutes each. Rob?
Super. This is a good time. So Nathan, in your opinion, what do you think is more harmful to society, alcohol or marijuana?
I would say that that's a question that is insignificant to the overall question. But for the sake of discussion, I would say that marijuana is more of a harm than alcohol.
Right. Now, I can't respond to you, so I just ask questions. So why do you think that's the case?
Again, I think the addictive nature of it. I think that the want for potency, but also it has a very short burn on regulation. Now, it's not to say that 40 years in the future, we might be having a completely different discussion. But the bottom line is we just don't know enough about marijuana at this point. So my thing is, why can't we just take a step back and get more information? Why are we having to pull a trigger? And so again, going back to the initial thing, is this a positive move for America? No. At this point, it is not. At this time, 2018, it is not more beneficial than having the status quo of it being illegal.
All right. So when you talk about younger people using marijuana, if there was regulations in place that said anyone, let's say the medical community agreed anyone over the age of 22 doesn't suffer the long-term effects, because I agree that anyone under 22 ought not to use marijuana. Would you be for legalizing marijuana if that was one of the regulations?
I mean, it would be a start, but again, the young people are participating in it. And in fact, in Colorado, their teen participation since legalization has skyrocketed. When you say, hey, it's okay for the adults to do, but it's not okay for you to do, especially with the false science out there that there are zero harms to marijuana, it becomes very what is your reasoning for keeping it from kids at that point? And there is a lot of pseudo false science that says there are zero negative effects of marijuana. I mean, they want us to believe that this is some miracle huff puff thing, and it's just not accurate.
In adults, what are some of the largest concerns with long-term marijuana usage?
Well, I think the regulation piece of it. So first of all, these dispensaries aren't regulated, but they're also more expensive. So there's also, not only do you have the booming legal market, but you also have the black market. And what you get then is you get synthetic marijuana, or as it's commonly known as posh. And posh is going to be a mixture of whatever, whenever. And let me tell you, you talk about the lung cancer argument, the CDC says they can't verify. And they actually think that the toxins that are put in for mixtures are probably more toxins and more cancerous than that of actual cigarettes. But again, it's something that we just don't do a lot of studying on. So it's one of those issues where, is a lack of information actually an affirmative, or is a lack of information just a pausing point to where we need to get more?
Do you think the CDC is the best environment for study surrounding marijuana?
I don't know about the best study, but I will say on the CDC website, they link to multiple other studies to back up their claims. So again,
1 minute.
The CDC doesn't necessarily do a lot of these studies, but they are linking and they're going out and getting it. So for example, it has this whole section on what it does for cancer. So while the studies do show that a patient is helped a little bit with pain during chemotherapy, it doesn't show a positive effect on the cancer itself. It's the side effects of the actual chemotherapy.
Yeah. So long term, I'm trying to get to the public issue here. So from a medical perspective, what long term effects do you think marijuana would have on a person after long term use, assuming they started in their adult years?
Well, the answer to that is we just don't have enough information. But the limited information we do have, we know it does cause, if it's smoked, it does cause lung issues. We also know that it does affect and rewires the brain sensors, and it is addictive. Again, 1 in 10, it has an addictive quality to where they're dependent.
Time. All right, 5 minutes of cross-examination. Nathan, what are your questions?
All right, so I want to get down to the correlation versus causation, and so let's look at there have been. Let's look at the traffic data. So, Rob, you talk about what is your hesitation in accepting that it could be causation of fatal traffic accidents?
The only hesitation that I've seen, and this is an area where I agree with you that there are conflicting reports. So anytime that's why I didn't really use traffic deaths as part of my pro or con argument, because there's not really a lot of good information surrounding this. It really does seem to be split. But the issue that I have is that when a state legalizes marijuana and then they start testing for marijuana more, and this is obviously anecdotal because it's state by state. When a state starts testing for marijuana more, then other causes of the accident, such as even texting or alcohol use, or there might be other peripheral issues going on that may not be considered. But since they tested positive for marijuana, then they chalk that up as a marijuana-related traffic fatality when it may not have been the cause.
So what if I told you that in Colorado, and I'm going to go to Colorado specifically, what if I told you in Colorado specifically that they do not test for they have not tested for drugs more?
Then that's fine. I don't think it's just a Colorado issue. As I said, it could be anecdotal, staying state by state, because Washington is another state that has a different study detailing more tests for marijuana usage. So I would agree. If that's the case, then that's perfectly fine.
And also in Washington, it has a similar participation rate as far as the curve. It looks very similar to Colorado's.
I've seen, and we can share sources after, but I've seen more testing taking place in marijuana following legalization. But again, even if that's the case, I'm willing to grant the point that if you say more traffic fatalities, that's fine. When juxtaposed, measured to alcohol fatalities, it's not even close.
Going back to the traffic cause, because this goes back to kind of public safety, are you aware that there is not a field sobriety test for marijuana?
There is. They're doing. Granted, there's not a national rolled out test, but some of the stuff I was reading earlier was showing that there are roadside tests that can be done to show marijuana uses. The trouble is, THC has such a long-lasting effect that false positives are generated. So it's something they're still working on. But yes, I'm aware.
2 minutes.
When it comes to the regulation, how the main issue that I have is how do you marry up this is how it could be done, where we would have regulation, we would have this wonderful, perfect world, and how do you marry that up with the fact that is not being done in any sense in the states that have actually adopted legalization? In other words, that's kind of a leading question. Have you seen where this legalization has been done well that you can point to in America?
Well is subjective. I could, in my opinion, as long as I would have precedents set or laws set, if it was Michigan and I was the governor, I would have a 21 and older age restriction, and then adopt some of the things that they're doing in Colorado as far as state testing and purity and making sure that the dosages are correct and limiting how much people can buy and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's an issue of regulation. But as far as public safety, I don't think that if we legalized marijuana that we would have, as far as nationally, have a remote uptick in any issues associated with it.
But have you seen any state where this is done where there haven't been any upticks that opponents can point to?
I think Washington's probably the state that I've seen the least amount of you can say issues, or the least amount of bias. Not, bias isn't the right word, but the least amount of conflicting reports. But then that gets into what's your criterion for what you mean by problems, right? Because again, that gets into the correlation causation issue. Is it an issue of testing more? Is it an issue of looking at it more? Doing data reports that we may not have done before. It's a big issue.
Time. All right. So for this final segment of cross-examination, we will do another 5 minutes, and I will be asking some questions, and I will ask them to both Nathan and to Rob. So we will begin. All right, Nathan, so in a perfect world, how should marijuana be classified according to DEA's drug scheduling?
It's very difficult, but I think that so the different classifications, for those who aren't aware of the different classifications, so it goes by in general, it goes by the addictive level of a drug, of also the medicinal purposes or the practical purposes outside its legal usage. So your class 1 drugs are going to be drugs that have high addictive properties and have zero medicinal benefit. Your class 2 drugs are going to be those that may be addictive in nature, but they have a medicinal benefit, right? So that's why cocaine, for example, is a class 2 drug, not a class 1 drug, because it actually is used for eye surgeries, so it has a medicinal benefit. As far as a class 1 drug, marijuana itself, I don't see having a medicinal benefit. That can't be given without, for example, its extracts. So CBD oil or those things that are now being approved by the FDA. So I don't see a medicinal benefit for marijuana itself that isn't being able to garnered in a different form. Very similar to where heroin has no medicinal benefit. It's a class 1. However, some of its extracts and other opioids that are built off its scientific basis are used medicinally.
And Rob, same question to you. How should marijuana be classified?
I would probably schedule it in probably Schedule 4. So Schedule 4 is low potential for abuse, medical benefits. I think THC and both CBD both have proven medical benefits. So I would schedule it Class 4. And because the dependency is quite low, I mean, it's 9%, and the CDC report that Nathan references 10%. So even if we split the difference, it's a fairly low dependency for a pretty big gain for all the medicinal benefits of it. Plus, heroin's like a 23 to 25% dependency, and as Nathan correctly pointed, there's no medical benefits. But for the DEA to say there's no accepted medical benefits of marijuana, I mean, that's absurd. I mean, so many people from both sides were calling them out when they decided to leave it at Schedule 1. It's ridiculous.
All right, so Rob, what types of regulations would you be in favor of? How would those be enforced? And also, how would it be taxed?
So I'm okay. I think Colorado taxes marijuana at like 40%, and I mean I'm open to whatever tax. Let's use Michigan as the example. Michigan wants to put on it. As far as regulation, I would probably keep it 21 and older and cite scientific studies about the full frontal cortex not being developed and impacting younger users longer. So I would not want people under 21, in a perfect world, probably 25 to use it, unless there was extenuating circumstance medically. As far as how to regulate it, I mean, it depends on what we're talking about as far as how much. You could put a buy as far as what the legal amount to buy is, but with alcohol, there's none of that. So I'd probably leave it the same that we do with alcohol. You can buy as much as you want, but you have to be a certain age to do it. Like, I'm pretty libertarian on this. Like, I don't think that it should be that heavily regulating. Tax the hell out of it, but not regulating it's going to be demonstrably difficult, because then you get into you kind of lose some of the benefits that you get with legalizing it from like the drug war dropping off.
Okay, follow-up question, Rob. Then how would that prevent the black market for still being a major piece of drug trafficking and the drug cartels, et cetera, when on the black market it's not taxed and it's heavily taxed 40, 50, 60% by the state?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know that it depends on the street value of the weed, honestly. Some things that I read, and this is again anecdotal and quite subjective, but that the states that have legalized it are still cheaper than the street weed. I mean, it's still a possibility, right? I mean, you have it's not that the moonshine business is kicking right now. Uncle Jesse's kind of put his car away, but there's an argument to be made about what level to tax it and to sort of price out people on the black market. But that type of market, the illegal market in the states that have legalized, have significantly dropped, is best as they can tell. It's not like that's a qualitative study, but it's an interesting discussion for sure.
All right, Nathan, same question to you. What in a perfect world, what types of regulations would marijuana have, and how would you manage that for even, especially even now for states that have it legalized?
If we are buying into the claim that it is exactly like alcohol, then it needs to be regulated at a basis of what alcohol is regulated. That means its proofs, its quantities are regulated, it's taxed, and it has the full force of the federal government going against those who are trying to, again, create moonshine or other black market entities, and the full force of the federal government going. The federal government also, if we're doing it then the FDA and the FTC need to use their full force to go after these ridiculous claims that it's helping birth moms, and it's helping with morning sickness, and it's going to cure your cancer. Essentially, what you have in the marijuana community is basically those who are kind of outcast from the essential oil community. The kind of claims that they make to the benefits of marijuana have actually worse verification under the FDA than what does essential oils. At least essential oils have some basis of FDA beliefs for their cures of different diseases and such, far above what marijuana actually has. So we need to find out exactly what those claims are. And if you're claiming something that's outside the bounds and you're trying to make a medical diagnosis, you need to be held accountable to that. So when that mom has an addicted baby to THC, when it's born, that she can come after you for the full force because you decided to tell her that it's perfectly safe. You cannot even smoke marijuana when you're breastfeeding. You can have 1 drink a day while you're breastfeeding. So we keep on saying it's the exact same as alcohol. Is it? No, it's not.
All right, time. So now I will pass it to you, gentlemen, for closing remarks, 1 minute each. Since Rob opened up the debate with his remarks, Nathan will begin with his closing remarks. Nathan, you have 1 minute on the clock.
Is it in the best interest of the American people to legalize marijuana now? And the answer is no. Now, it's not to say that it couldn't be in the distant future, but the bottom line is we just don't understand the full effects of marijuana usage. Similar to periods of time where doctors would recommend smoking to calm nerves, or doctors would recommend opium and other opioids, and would give out cocaine. There have been periods in the medical community where studies were warranted to figure out the long-term effects. We simply don't have that. There's no way to put in place proper policy to regulate and ensure that we have a good environment to where the negative benefits or the negative consequences of marijuana aren't felt by those who are innocent in these communities.
Time. Rob, 1 minute.
All right, so if you remember in my opening statement, I talked about how there's a cumulative case to be made. I don't think marijuana and alcohol are synonymous. I think that by looking at one, you can look at precedent for the other. So when we talk about legalizing marijuana, is it a benefit to society? It depends on what you mean by benefit. Is it in the best interest based upon precedent? Well, absolutely. You could make the easy argument there are worse things that are legal for the American public, but I think that there is another argument to be made that marijuana even just from a medical perspective, is far more beneficial than things that are being pushed through the FDA. Essential oils is a good thing to compare it to. And Nathan's right. There are claims that are ridiculous that people make, but that doesn't downsize the benefit that marijuana has. So it ought to be legalized for the American people.
All right, time. Gentlemen, it has been a lively debate. I am sure that we will have future conversations on this. For those of our listeners who may not be aware, we also have a Facebook group that they can link to by going to moneypowerpod.com/group. That'll link to our new Money and Power podcast discussion page. They can ask to join that. We've had a couple discussions related to legalization of marijuana and several other related issues. So if you have any thoughts, feel free to tweet us at Money Power Pod. Feel free to hit us up on Facebook and Instagram, also at Money Power Pod. And people can email us info@moneypowerpod.com. And we would love to hear your thoughts. But now, as we're moving on, we can have discussions all day about, will marijuana cure cancer? Does marijuana cure glaucoma? Does it help with muscle spasms? Does it help you sleep? Does it help with PTSD? Well, some of those questions are still to be determined. But you know what does all of those things and more? Strikeforce Energy. StrikeforceEnergy.com for all your energy needs. It's a tasty little beverage enhancer in a nice little tasty tin pouch. Pour it into 16 ounces of your favorite beverage, and it'll enhance the crap out of it. Go to StrikeforceEnergy.com. It comes in 10 packs, 40 packs, 750 milliliter pump bottle. Any way that you want it. Lemon, comes in orange, comes in lemon, comes in original, comes in grape. They like to call it Make America Grape Again. Strikeforce Energy, they've been a long-time sponsor since the beginning. You can use Money and Power, our coupon code MAP for Money and Power for 20% off all of your orders. Try it out. Let us know what you think, and let us know. Does it cure all of your ailments? Probably. Will it keep you energized at the very least to get the job done and make sure you're kicking butt and taking names? Absolutely. So try it out, StrikeforceEnergy.com. Use coupon code MAP for 20% off.
Thank you for that. All right.
It's good stuff.
All right. Good job, Rob.
Likewise.
All right.
I guess we can still be friends.
Yeah.
All right. Whatever.
I'll
Hold on. I gotta finish rolling up this fatty. Hold on.
Let me grab my whiskey. All right. Now, what are we doing next here? Mount Rushmore. We haven't done this in a while. We don't have a jingle for it. Every time we do this, it's under protest from Jeremiah because he thinks it's ridiculous. But we're going to do it. And
I think it's the best bit we do.
Me too. I think it would be a standing one if it was up to me, but that's all right. It's all right. We're giving Jeremiah some more power because he just wants it and stuff. All right. So we are doing the Mount Rushmore, our Mount Rushmore of comedians. So we kind of had a heavy topic. So now let's go with that. All right, your Mount Rushmore of comedians. Rob.
All right. So I think when we talk about comedians, there's like an obvious core four that people look to. You probably won't find any of those on this list. So championing the Mount Rushmore, the George Washington of comedy, if you will, for me is Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle, especially his new stuff since he came back off hiatus on Netflix, is probably the best comedy bit, the best comedy special I've ever seen. It's amazing. I definitely recommend watching it. Language warning for those of you sensitive to those types of things. The second one is Bill Burr. Bill Burr is another comedian who is spot on with most of his observations, and he just doesn't really have a filter, and he's not one of the comedians who says says something that's obviously a joke and then goes and apologizes. He just owns it, and he's like, that's the joke, deal with it, and that's why I really like Bill Burr. Third one is Rodney Dangerfield. Now this is a pick it's probably a surprise pick, sleeper, if you will. Well, he's dead, so I mean that's probably
He's still not
a little
getting
too on the
respect.
nose, right?
Still
Rodney
sleeping.
Dangerfield. He's wonderful. Caddyshack's one of the best comedies, and he's a great comedian. He's very fast, million jokes, good dude. The last one is tough. There's like three people that I was going to put in this slot, but I'll go with another sleeper pick. I'm still debating as I'm talking about it. I'm going to go with Greg Giraldo instead of Tim Allen. I'm going to go with Tim Allen because I like him a lot, but Tim Allen doesn't really do a lot of stand-up these days. But Greg Giraldo is also dead. He died in 2010. He doesn't do comedy anymore either. But Greg was known for roasting. He did all the Comedy Central roasts, all of the old school roasts. He was the roast master, and he was a genius comedy writer. Very, very underappreciated, very under-respected in the comedy community. Giraldo was great. So I think that rounds out my Mount Rushmore. The other two I was going to throw in there was Tim Allen and Norm Macdonald, but I think Giraldo's got him beat.
All right, awesome. So for mine, kind of in a similar boat, trying to round it out as we speak. It's not easy, because when we first introduced this segment, it's the Mount Rushmore, it's like who are the four presidents that we're going to put up there on a mountain to be, forever, idolized, if you will. And so I don't know that my list necessarily meets that standard, but hey, I like them. And so I'm gonna go with for my number one. I'm gonna say Jerry Seinfeld. This is probably the more obvious of of my four in my list, but yeah, I mean, when you think of, kind of I don't know if grandfather of comedy is a good, is a good way to describe that. But I mean, a lot of, when you look at his show, when you look at, his stand up, what he brought to the table, and how he has influenced, modern day, comedy, I think Jerry Seinfeld is up there, for one of the greats. And now, for my other three, current comedians that I really enjoy. I don't know in the grand scheme of history where they'll line up, but I really like John Mulaney. I haven't seen a single one of his. I haven't seen anything from him that I haven't liked. Just really, really smart, witty. Really enjoy his comedy. And if you haven't checked him out, you got to check him out on Netflix. My number three is Bo Burnham.
Good pick.
I really he meshes comedy and music. He's got some parody stuff out there that is just top notch. Just can't be beat. Just very incredibly intelligent, but also self-aware, and just even Yeah, I mean, just he makes fun of himself, and it's just really, I don't even know how to describe his style of comedy, but just really great. I love him a lot. But my fourth and final, I'm gonna go with Jim Gaffigan. Jim Gaffigan is probably one of my favorites. He is clean comedy. He's a Catholic. He's got 5 kids. He's constantly talking about his kids and the struggles of having a large family and raising kids. And it's really really applies to kind of me personally, and just I really resonate with it. And he's just funny. The voices and his tempo and his even dry sense of humor. I don't know what else to say, but it's good stuff. So that's my 4: Jerry Seinfeld, John Mulaney, Bo Burnham, and Jim Gaffigan. Nathan?
All right, so man, this is a tough list. I have like so many like honorable mentions on here. All right, so my first one on here is Dave Chappelle. So I have him on my list as well. And you pretty much covered that, Rob. My next one's gonna be Eddie Murphy. And like, if there's anyone who owned the 80s as far as SNL and the movies like Beverly Hills Cop, etc., like it's Eddie Murphy. And if you are younger and you just know him from like Daddy Daycare or something, like go on YouTube. Like, fine.
I saw Beverly Hills Cop. Quit looking at me. I know him from more than Daddy Daycare.
Anyways, so I really enjoy it. My next one is Robin Williams. Just a comedic genius and the way his mind works. So, have you guys seen the HBO documentary on Robin Williams?
No.
All right. So, I encourage you to watch it. It is amazing as far as a documentary, but also some of the old clips of him just going, like when his mind gets going like a million miles a minute, and he's just going from like bit to bit to bit, thing to thing to thing, and he's putting things together. You're like, what is going on? And then like the behind the scenes of what he ad-libbed for like Mrs. Doubtfire. Like he ad-libbed so much of that movie. When he was the genie on Aladdin, the amount of stuff he was just ad-libbing and going from here to here to here. And then they had to go back and animate what he was actually doing on all those bits as the genie. It was pretty phenomenal. This next one, I don't know. He always makes me laugh. And I had a couple honorable mentions. I had Tom Green on here. And then I also had a Weird Al, mainly just because they're main influences in my life. Probably don't belong on Mount Rushmore, though. Mini Nathan Rushmore, maybe, but not Mount Rushmore. But I just decided to put Jeff Foxworthy on there. Always makes me laugh. Always makes me just like the way he's able to translate Southern culture, but just in a self-deprecating way, but not in a like mean-spirited way, is hilarious. And he always makes me laugh, so I decided to put him on there. Gaffigan was also very close for me. But yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we've had a couple honorable mentions. Now, real quick, I don't know if we've done this before, but real quick, worst comedian top of mind. Go. Anyone?
Man, that's tough. All
right. I'll go with one. I mean, and I'll explain why. I mean, there's probably worse comedians out there, but this one was a shock to me. Okay, so I'm going to go with Howie Mandel, and I'm gonna say Howie Mandel because I first heard of Howie Mandel from his TV appearances like on Deal or No Deal, and then later America's Got Talent and things like that. And so I started seeing him in some of these shows, and one day I just decided I'm going to go down a YouTube rabbit trail and look at, because he's apparently known as a stand-up comic. I went back, and it is so bad. It's not even like some comedy where it's like, oh, that's dated. It's just objectively bad. And I love Howie Mandel currently, and I love the shows that he's on, but I'm sorry, as a stand-up comic, he's pretty near the bottom of at least my list. So
That's good. I have two, and both are for the same reason. So Carlos Mencia and Amy Schumer would probably be my two unfunny.
Amy Schumer is mine. That was gonna be mine.
Okay. And I was gonna put Michelle Wolf, but she's not really a comedian. She's just a writer, and she's. But yeah, so the reason why is because both of those guys and girls have a history of stealing other people's material and using it for their own. And Amy Schumer did this in her Comedy Central show, and she's done it in her stand-up. And one of my favorite clips, if you ever have a chance to watch it, it's posted on Rogan's feed, is Joe Rogan calling out Carlos Mencia at the Comedy Store for stealing other people's jokes. And at one point, Mencia's like, I don't steal other people's jokes. And he's like, yeah, you stole Ari Shaffir, who's another comedian. He's like, you stole his jokes. He's like, no, I didn't. And Ari Shaffir was in the audience. And he came up and he's like, yeah, you totally did. Here's when and where. And Mencia looked awful. He lost his show over that too. And so, yeah, that's a good clip. Yeah, those are my two. Probably, I'm sure there's other people out there that really suck, but those are probably the two that I'm like, I would never watch anything with them in it.
Yeah, Amy Schumer's mine, like, people just like, oh, she's funny. And I don't find any of her movies funny. I just don't find her funny. So I'm like, oh, okay, yeah.
I mean, I've enjoyed some of her movies, but it's a different thing. It's a different thing altogether. That you've got a group of writers that are putting together a movie, and do you give your input to that? Probably, but it's completely separate and distinct from some of her shows and specials and such. That there's it is telling that some of her funny stuff, some of her only funny stuff is actually other people's jokes. So
yeah. One thing I want to do before we close the bit, I want to use a historical trump card, if you will. I want to override my last pick. Can I do that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you edit the show, so
that's true. I'm going to leave this in here just for timing and for suspense. I can build it up. I'm going to substitute Geraldo with Ron White.
Taylor.
Ron White's, yeah. Ron White, especially his last couple specials, have been very good. Especially like his.
Speaking of alcohol dependent,
yes, his bit got exponentially better when he left Blue Collar. Not that it wasn't good, but his last couple specials have been really good. And Bo Burnham is a really good pick. He'd probably be on my Mount Rushmore as well. I just kind of forgot because I haven't listened to his stuff in a bit. But yeah, he's super talented.
And shout out to Larry, the cable guy, because he's a pastor's son from Nebraska.
Daniel Whitney.
GBR. Go Big Red. All right. So now we come to the part of the show that, people are now sad about because we have actual real live listeners who enjoy the show, and they're sad when we get to this part of the show because it's ending. Parting shots.
Oh, that was a little low.
There you go.
I'll go all right. 1 week.
Jeremiah.
All right. So my parting shot is, I don't really know what the category would be, but I'm going to start it off with a story. Okay.
Yeah.
So Corey Asbury is a worship leader, a songwriter, musician. Probably most famous for his song "Reckless Love." Now, there's been some, controversy over that song, but that's not what this is about. So Corey Asbury was at a conference, and it was either hosted by Chick-fil-A, or Chick-fil-A was the primary sponsor of said conference. And instead of accepting an honorarium, which for the size and scope of the conference would have been fairly large, instead of accepting payment, he asked Chick-fil-A to give him a black card. And a black card is an infamous kind of mythology within Chick-fil-A that it allows you to go into any Chick-fil-A store and get unlimited free Chick-fil-A. And so he opted for that. And he's got a wife and kids, and I don't know how many kids, but he decided that instead of, the whatever $10,000 or whatever it would have been for his honorarium, that it would have been worth it to get a black card from Chick-fil-A. And there has been some discussion online as to whether that was the right move, whether it would make sense. And I don't know, maybe Rob Johnson, our financial guru, has some thoughts on this, what he could get for that $10,000, with a 10% rate of return. But I don't know what kind of rate of return you get on Chick-fil-A, but it is immense happiness. That is for sure. And I would absolutely, I would give up my children to have a Chick-fil-A black card. And that is my parting shot, that I desperately want a Chick-fil-A black card. So Chick-fil-A, if anyone from Chick-fil-A is listening, my address is, well, just email the show and we'll get you my address.
Yeah, and how would they contact us?
They would contact us
Nice.
at info@moneypowerpod.com is our new and improved email address, info@moneypowerpod.com. And they can also contact us at moneypowerpod on all social media channels. And they can join our group, our exclusive Facebook discussion group, moneypowerpod.com/group. We'll link them there.
And you know what? If they have a podcast, maybe it's Chicken Talk. Maybe it's
420 every day.
Maybe it's the cows doing a podcast, like, what have you heard?
Ooh.
So, if they wanted to, they could join the Money Power Pod network. Money and Power Podcast Network. And how would they do that, though? They have to contact us and apply.
You have to apply.
Yeah. You can go to moneypowerpod.com/application for all of the information on the different tiered levels and how to join and how to apply and how to contact us for more information. So if you have a podcast out there, or if you want to start a podcast and don't really know all the details and how to do that, we can help you through that process. And as we grow as a network, we can help you grow with us. So visit us, moneypowerpod.com/application for more information on that.
So I figured it up. If my family had a black card,
Okay.
and we went all we did is went 5 times a week,
Okay.
it'd be $7,800 for the year.
Okay.
And that's $30, and that's pretty low for what it would actually take to feed my family. But I just used 30 because I'm going to use another. But if you bump that up to 40, then you're well over 10,000 for the year.
Yeah. I mean, my thing is we don't even have a Chick-fil-A, within 45 minutes of us.
Yeah.
And I still think it would be worth it.
Oh, 100%. So the other thing is, like, okay, so this kind of annoys me too. So when I usually come home on trips, I come home on Sunday.
Of course.
And I'm driving. And there's been times where I actually get off the exit to go to Chick-fil-A. And then I realize I'm driving home on a Sunday. And yeah.
Yeah. That's a good financial move for him to do that. I would not take the 10K. I wouldn't even take 50K. I'd take the black card. 100%.
because you're not going to get another opportunity. Like, if you're in his shoes, you can always get another 10K somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
You're not
Right, well,
getting a black card from anywhere else.
Yeah, the math I did, even if you took like $200 a month, right, and you did that over 10 years, you're looking at 24K. So that come on now, that's a deal winner right there.
I would eat so much Chick-fil-A though. Be like, I'm not paying for this. Oh, I am getting 3 spicy chicken sandwiches today.
I'm so excited about the idea of a black card. I can't even coherently tell you the math about how good of a benefit that is.
You know what? So, in we may be announcing conferences and stuff in the future. The big conference that we're planning.
Yeah.
We definitely need to get Chick-fil-A as a sponsor. I'm making that my whole life's mission.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. So speaking of parting shots.
Yeah. Rob.
Yeah, so I want to tack on one more thing for the network. So if you have a podcast, you want to apply, Jeremiah gave the link, but it's a good, if you want to start a podcast, it's a good idea to join a network if you want access to tens of thousands of listeners that are already on other shows. So if it's a good foundation for sure if you jump on board. But apart from that, I want to make a correction. I was actually demonstrably wrong this week, and I want to correct myself because when I screw up, I don't like to delete the post and and hide from it. I'm going to call it out. So earlier this week on Rob Talks Money, I'm going to blend our shows a little bit. I had posted an article saying how I disagreed with Paul Tripp about an article he posted on Desiring God, talking about how debt is not a money problem. I actually misread a part of the article pretty badly. I thought at one point, this is why you shouldn't skim read articles, but I'm going to take full responsibility for this. I thought he said it's impossible and dangerous to solve personal debt apart from religion. And I was like, well, there's atheists who are millionaires. Like, what the hell is he talking about? And then I went through and reread the article after 2 people commented and they said, yeah, man, I disagree with you. Why do you disagree with him? And sure enough, I was 100% wrong. So my parting shot is to read articles a little more closely. So
I have a question about this.
Yeah.
This isn't Rob Talks Money, obviously.
Yeah.
So is this a bit like the New York Times correcting like a front page error, but they put it like on page 7?
Yes. Well, I'm going to talk about this more in depth on my show, but I told someone had emailed me about it, and I told them I would respond in a parting shot on Money and Power because it was coming up sooner than my next recording for RTM. So I'm going to address it both places because that was a big mistake. I like Paul Tripp too.
Well, my parting shot is also an apology. I'm just joking. I regret nothing.
Except that Huskers fandom.
Oh man, there's so many regrets. Seemed like a good idea at the time. No, I'm joking. My parting shot is I had something, but you know what? Go hug your family. Call your mom and dad. Tell them you love them. Life is short. Had 2 friends, actually 3 friends, different circumstances. One has just his marriage is falling apart. The other, all of a sudden, his parents have passed away, and be the love in your sphere of influence. You never know when it's going to be your last. So that's it. A little touchy-feely, but you know what? It's all right. There's a lot of hatred in the world. Go Big Red.
Yeah, I see Zoloft prices going up right now.
Hey, there you are. It's all about it. All right. Anything else before we close up shop? Going once, going twice. All right.
No, I'm done. Bye, everybody.
For Jeremiah Martin, for Rob Johnson, I am Nathan Martin, your adorable host, saying good night and good luck.
Bye.
That's some fake news right there.
I got the money in the pile. Once you get a little, they just wanna take you down, cuz we've been going hard for too long. Can't get enough, what is you on?